My husband has a golden child and it is absolutely destroying our family. Recently our two other sons had enough. My husband and I have 3 teenage sons. They are Mason, 18, Kyle, 15, and Sean, 13. Our youngest son Sean is my husband's favorite. He knows this, I know this, and what really destroys me is that our children know it. The favoritism started when Sean was 5 years old. He got pneumonia and was dangerously close to death. Through the entire hospital stay Sean always wanted his dad above anyone else and it bonded them. Ever since then my husband has always favored and spoiled Sean to the detriment of his relationships with Mason and Kyle. The 2 older boys noticed as they got older and were understandably hurt that Sean was the golden child who could do no wrong. Sean destroyed their stuff, hit them and stole money from them. Their dad always excused Sean's actions. I had several conversations with my husband throughout the years about how he needs to realize he has 3 sons, not just one. The stuff I said seemed to go in one ear and out the other. I truly realized how big the favoritism was when Sean stole $200 in cash from Mason's wallet, and instead of making Sean give it back, their dad told Mason to let it go and to forgive Sean, simply because he was younger and less understanding. Fast forward to today. Kyle's school had an award ceremony that Kyle would be presented an award at. The ceremony was virtual, and was essentially a large group video call where the kids would be recognized for their academic achievements and there was a raffle for several prizes. Kyle was excited because one of the prizes was a game system he wanted. Parents were invited to join in on their own computer to get an extra entry for raffle prizes on behalf of their children. I wasn't going to be able to make it as I had work, but I told my husband to just drop in and watch them read Kyle's name, as well as stick around so Kyle could have a slightly better chance at getting the prize he wanted. Again, this was a virtual event. All that my headache-causing husband had to do was go to the website and sit there for less than half an hour. He said he'd do it no problem. On the day of the event I reminded him before I left for work to make sure he showed up. I sent him the invite link again while I was at work just to be sure he had it and he assured me he'd be there. Well, the event came and went. Kyle was in his room on his own laptop for the event and my husband never joined the group call. I was busy at work so I couldn't message him back until almost an hour after the event ended. I asked how it went. He replied, "Oh yeah, the event. Sorry I forgot about it, not gonna lie, I saw red." I was furious but I wanted to wait until I got home to talk to him. So I get home and see our oldest son Mason's car in our driveway. He does not live with us anymore, he is in college and has his own apartment. I walk inside and our youngest Sean is in the living room looking upset. I ask him what's wrong and he says the other boys are fighting with Dad. I asked what happened and he said he doesn't know, just that Kyle got really mad and called Mason when he told Kyle that he and my husband went to get frozen yogurt earlier. I asked what time they went and he told me. It was 10 minutes before Kyle's event. At that moment Mason, Kyle and my husband all come down the stairs. They're yelling and Mason has a duffel bag with Kyle's things. I asked what was happening and Mason said he's taking Kyle with him to stay at his apartment for a while. I told him Kyle can stay the night but he can't just move in with him. My husband said that Kyle is not leaving and he needs to talk to him privately. But Mason blew up on him. He said everyone knows Sean is his favorite and he couldn't tell Sean to wait 30 minutes before taking him to get yogurt. That's when I realized my husband never forgot about the event, he just deemed taking Sean for frozen yogurt was more important. At this point, Kyle joins in and says that he's tired of his dad always choosing Sean over the 2 of them and he wants to stay with Mason. My husband was apologizing and saying he doesn't choose Sean over them, he just made a miscalculation. Mason spoke up, saying you always just make mistakes that leave me and Kyle on the back burner, and told him to try to remember the last time he did something with either he or Kyle alone. My husband listed 2 events. Mason reminded him that Sean tagged along for both. My husband said they're family and of course he's allowed to go with them. Kyle shouted back that my husband has taken out-of-town trips with just him and Sean 7 times in the last year and a half. And he was right. Sean got visibly upset at this point. Mason said he was sorry and that this wasn't about anything Sean did wrong. That it was their dad's fault and not his. Sean went upstairs to his room. My husband started going after him and Mason said, "See? You've got 3 upset sons and you still run off to cuddle Sean." My husband said that's not true, he's just more sensitive than the other boys. Mason told him he wants so badly for Sean to be his only son that he can have his wish. He said not to call or text him or Kyle anymore and that they don't have a dad anymore. Kyle added, "You already act like we don't exist anyway." My husband's face dropped. The way he was neglecting our 2 older boys finally hit him. I was a sobbing mess. I could see the hurt in both my sons' eyes. I told them to stay so we could talk and find a solution. Kyle begged me to just let him leave, saying he didn't want to be in the house anymore. Mason hugged me and assured me he'd make sure Kyle got his schoolwork done and he'd call me tomorrow. I let them go. As much as I want Kyle here, I know he needs time away from my husband. My husband went to the kitchen and cried. He's never been an emotional man, but the reality of our two older boys wanting to go no contact with him finally knocked some sense into him. I wanted to yell and scream at him. I told him for years that he needed to stop favoring one child. All he had to do was show up one goddamn time for Kyle. I'm so angry. Instead, I told my husband that I love him and I know he's hurt, so I'm not going to yell at him. But I told him I love my children more and that if he didn't fix things with his boys and start treating them equally from this moment forward, I would be divorcing him. He just said, I don't want to lose my family. He started to get up, saying he should make sure Sean was okay. I told him I would check on Sean and for once he needed to think of his other sons. I admit I was passive-aggressive, but my blood was boiling and I was trying my best not to tear my husband down any more than my son's parting words had. I spent the next hour consoling Sean and reassuring him that his brothers don't hate him and that their issue is with my husband, not him. He said they won't text him back and I said he needs to give them time. When our oldest son Mason took our middle child Kyle away from the home, things were a mess for the night. Thankfully, Mason called me the next day as he promised and said Kyle was settling and fine. I asked how they felt about our youngest, and my dad's golden child Sean, and Mason said that he and Kyle talked last night and while they don't necessarily blame Sean, that it's still hard not to be slightly angry at him, especially because we can all see that Sean does realize he's the favorite and leans into it, by stealing or breaking things and getting away with it in the past. In the end, both boys texted Sean that they weren't mad but they needed time away to cool off. Sean was of course sad, but I did get through to him that sometimes people need space. A couple days later I dropped Sean off at Mason's apartment and the boys had a movie and game night. I'm not sure what was said, but Sean came back much happier and his brothers are texting him back again. Regarding my husband, I was weak and I caved the night of the incident. My husband was supposed to sleep alone in the guest room, but I came in to comfort him. I saw him still awake on his laptop. I asked what he was doing and he showed me the screen. He was searching for therapists. I asked why he was looking for a therapist. He said because he feels like he's only going to get one chance to make things right with the boys and he wanted a professional to tell him the best way to do so. It lifted so much of my fears and anxiety about how he felt. I cried and I told him to come back to our room. He started therapy soon after. His therapist suggested sending a short apology to Kyle and Mason and promising to work on himself. Both his therapist and myself read the text but did not change or influence him in any way. The words are entirely his own. He wrote, "I'm sorry I messed up. For years I messed up. I hate that I let it get to this point and I hate that I hurt you both so badly. I love you. I will always love you and I know you may not want to talk to me right now, but I've just started therapy and I hope in time that you boys will forgive me and give me a chance to be better for both of you. There is so much more I want to say, but I would like to say it in person. You can always call me, text me, or come home when you're ready to talk. Anytime. I will drop whatever I'm doing when you're ready to talk. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I love you boys. Love, Dad." Kyle called me a couple hours after my husband sent them the text and asked me to come over, which I did. Mason and Kyle were there and they asked me if their dad really wrote the message. I assured them that he did and reiterated that neither I nor his new therapist wrote a single word of his apology. It was all him. They admitted it felt good to know that he did care, but they needed time. This was also when we talked about Sean. A week went by with no response to my husband's text. Then another week went by. He was heartbroken. He broke down in our bedroom one night and just cried, saying he'd ruined his relationship with his sons and they were never going to forgive him. I reassured him that wasn't the case, but it was hard for him to accept. I told him he needs to keep talking to his therapist and focus on himself. His relationship with Sean changed as well. Even though he was the only son we had in our home, he started to spend less time with him. And Sean was completely fine with this. His therapist helped him realize that he was the one always initiating hangout time with Sean. He'd go to his room and ask Sean if he wanted to do something. Or he'd tell Sean to go with him when he went to pick up dinner or go run errands. 5 days ago, Kyle finally texted my husband asking if he and Mason could come to the house. My husband, true to his word, called his boss and said he needed the rest of the day off for a family emergency. I dropped Sean off at my mother's house so the boys could talk openly to my husband without worrying about hurting Sean's feelings, and they came over and we all talked in the living room. It wasn't easy and we all cried. But my husband did everything right. He apologized. He didn't deny his favoritism. He told the boys about his work with his therapist and how it was helping. He said he's learned he justified his favoritism by telling himself that he and Sean were just closer, but he now realized they were only closer because he was putting the majority of his time and effort towards Sean instead of all three of the boys. My husband asked for one chance to show them he will treat them equally. Kyle accepted his apology. Mason said he wants to, but he feels like it's too late for him and my husband as he's already out of the house. My husband told Mason that he is Mason's father for life and asked him again for just a single chance. Mason agreed that he doesn't want to not have his dad in his life, but that he doesn't want to feel that pain again if he lets him in. He asked the boys what specifically they need from him besides him making improvements and how he communicates with them. Mason said he doesn't want it to feel forced, he wants it to be genuine. Kyle wanted a hug. My husband hugged him and cried and swore that whenever he has an event he will put multiple alarms on his phone the second he's told about it. My husband suggested family counseling. The boys are reluctant but did agree to go as we all want our family to heal and grow stronger.